why? Ask how. Howard! The humongous. What do Kim Jung Un's executed uncle, China's jade rabbit, Iran's space monkey, and Vladimir Putin have in common? Very simple. A battle for world domination. A battle, more specifically, for influence, global influence. A battle for top rung on the social hierarchical ladder of world leadership. What's happened in this week has been truly spectacular. Kim Jung Un on Monday had his uncle, the most influential man in the country, the man who was basically the regent when Kim Jong Un was considered too weak to lead the country of North Korea. Kim Jong Un, the dictator, had his uncle dragged out of a meeting of hundreds of politicians, a formal meeting. Then that was Monday, and Thursday, a mere 3 days later, if my arithmetic is at all correct, had his uncle executed. Wham, bam, thank you, man. Meanwhile, the Chinese sent a rocket to the moon carrying their first autonomous vehicle, their first space buggy, to land on a celestial body. Today, that vehicle was parked successfully on the moon, and it's ready to be lowered to the moon's surface, thus scoring one big win for China. The Iranians, not to be left out, were also competing for prestige and influence using the space race. Today, they put a monkey into space and brought the monkey safely back to Earth. Now, whether the altitude they achieved was really space or not, we do not know. But they are going further. Remember, a year ago, they launched a turtle, some mice, and a bunch of grasshoppers, if I've got my animals correct, into space. They are going for the big time. They are going for that high spot in the sky. And what did Vladimir Putin do this week? Two things that showed that he was lunging for the sort of leadership post that Barack Obama's difficulties in the United States may have left wobbly or open. Vladimir Putin did two things. When the Ukrainian leader was about to sign a deal with the EU, the European Union, that would have made the Ukraine a part of the European economy, something that hundreds of thousands of people taking to Ukraine's Kiev's, the capital's streets, wanted very badly. Vladimir Putin summoned the leader of the Ukraine to Moscow, sat him down, and we don't know exactly what he says, but we can guess. What in the world has Vladimir Putin used to exercise influence over Eastern European leaders in the past? He has threatened to cut off their supply of oil and gas in the middle of winter, something that would lose those leaders their position very rapidly. Some threats of that sort were apparently made because Ukraine's leader flew back to Kiev and said he was no longer going to sign the deal with the European Union. Instead, he was going to open an economic relationship of the same kind with Russia. Russia? What kind of economy does Russia have? Russia's the new Saudi Arabia, with a bunch of citizens staggering around dying 20 years younger than the inhabitants, the citizens of any other civilized country on Earth, many times of alcohol poisoning, and reproducing at a rate so low that the Russian population of Russia is shrinking. In other words, Vladimir Putin's citizenry is doing very poorly. The only thing that's doing well are his oil wells and natural gas supplies and the devices with which he pumps the money directly from the oil industry into his own pockets and the pockets, we presume, of a small number of supporters. In addition, Vladimir Putin pulled off another move. There is a Russian official news agency owned by the government that has established over the decades a reputation for independence. Vladimir Putin exterminated it. He erased it. He wiped it off the map. He fired the staff. And he put together a new news agency whose stated goal is to make Vladimir Putin look like the one good guy leader you can come to for solutions to problems, like the solution that Vladimir Putin offered in Syria a diplomatic solution of sorts. In reality, the killing goes on day after day, rather than the solution that we were contemplating in the United States, taking Tomahawk missiles and thwomping Bashir Assad's resources, Bashir Assad, the ruler of Syria, something that took us off the hot seat, but unfortunately also diminished the sense of American power and diminished the sense of American credibility because we had drawn a red line and we said Assad had to go. Of course, there was one small problem. The real enemy in Syria has never been Bashir Assad, not our enemy. The real enemy of Saudi Arabia is Bashir Assad because he's part of an alliance with the Iranians that in turn is allied with the Russians and the Chinese, and that looms over Saudi Arabia and makes it tremble in its socks or tremble in its sandals over the idea of being exterminated. This was a big week for battles over leadership positions. Barack Obama is seriously enfeebled by the fact that his promises and predictions with things like you will be able to keep your own health insurance have proven to be false. The man doesn't have an accurate sense of what will happen in the future. And that because leadership, status, a position on a dominance hierarchy comes in part from control, and control comes from your ability to predict. This has seriously undermined Barack Obama's leadership position. Meanwhile, a month ago, Steve Forbes, who runs periodically for president in the Republican Party, a party that has sworn for the last 6 years to do everything in its power to destroy Barack Obama and to make that its primary political goal, Steve Forbes put Vladimir Putin on the cover of Forbes magazine as the most influential man of the year, not Barack Obama, a move that seemed deliberately designed to humble Barack Obama. Vladimir Putin apparently took that seriously. Vladimir Putin was trying to show that he was the one good guy you could count on to rescue you when you were having difficulties, and he ran into a small problem. On Thursday night at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, it was announced that Nelson Mandela had died. Now, Nelson Mandela is the real deal when it comes to good guy leadership, a person that you can count on, a person who produces forgiveness, who brings people together rather than driving them apart. And Nelson Mandela reminded us of what a real good guy leader is all about. Vladimir Putin took a blow. Meantime, the leaders of Iran, the Ayatollahs, the supreme ruler of Iran he's the second Ayatollah to rule Iran. He's basically the dictator. The president of Iran and other political figures are window dressing because it's the supreme leader, a cleric, a Muslim holy man who makes all the real decisions. The goal of the Iranian constitution since 1979 has been to take over world leadership, to literally have world dominance. That's what the Ayatollah running Iran, is reaching out for. Meantime, where does Kim Jung Un fit into this? Kim Jung Un, who had his uncle hauled out of a political meeting, as I said, and executed 3 days later, Kim Jung Un is demonstrating yet another style of leadership, a style of leadership left over from the Stalinist era. Terrorize your people. Keep them quaking in their socks. Arrest them arbitrarily at random moments and drag them off to either execution or to the equivalent of concentration camps. And China, its jade rabbit, its lunar buggy, was there to demonstrate that China is in fact in the lead. China is taking over space. America is doing incredible, magnificent things in space. America has sent a new probe to Mars. America has the only country with functioning Mars buggies roaming the Martian surface, remote-controlled vehicles. Two of these vehicles that were supposed to last 6 months lasted 5 years or more. One of them is bringing back new samples today. There's one small problem with NASA's Mars probe. NASA's Mars probe launched from Earth 2 days after India's Mars probe. And India's Mars probe, though it's far more primitive than the American Mars probe, ours is far more sophisticated. The Indian Mars probe was launched at 1/10 of the military space industrial complex's bloated, overstuffed costs, the cost that they charge to NASA. For the price of one American Mars probe, you could launch 10 Mars probes. What did that prove? Well, there's also a race in space to see who can put up the most rockets the least expensively. Leading the pack is not quite an American, Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a South African, an immigrant who has come to the United States and started the company SpaceX, has taken over the company Tesla Motors and run it to a great deal of success despite three motor engine fires, battery fires over the course of the last month, and has grabbed attention for some of his solar activities. Most important, Elon Musk's 9-engine Falcon 9 rocket took off several days ago, carrying a 3.3-ton Belgian satellite at a third the cost of not only the space military industrial complex in the United States, but the two leading launchers, commercial launchers of space satellites for a $333 billion space satellite industry. Those two major launchers who were cadging all the money were the European Space Agency with its Ariane rocket and Russia with its Soyuz and what's the name of that other rocket? Probably an Energia. At any rate, with its rockets. And suddenly Elon Musk has lowered the cost to a third the cost of his competitors. Elon Musk, an immigrant, is keeping us in the space race. What does that say about the need for immigration reform? So the race is on to see who can demonstrate the most control, who can demonstrate the greatest ability to accurately predict, who can demonstrate the greatest ability to rule his or her own country, as in the case of Kim Jung Un, who is ruling by force of the bullet. And a great deal, and it sounds trivial. It sounds like something just going on for a week. But leadership races between nations, when nations vie with each other for top position in a pecking order, can go on for 10, 15, 20, 30, or 40 years. And the race is on. The race will go, in the long run, to he or she who is most persistent. He or she who does things in the smartest, simplest, least expensive, and most ambitious, sky-reaching, and beyond the sky-reaching way. This is Howard the Humongous coming to you from the future. That it's your job and my job to make. The stop button.